any more of a convoluted mess than the Michael Bay Transformers films? With the upcoming release of Transformers 7: Rise of the Beasts, it's time for you and I to figure it all out. I'm Chris Goodmakers, and this is the complete Transformers timeline explained. Optimus, save me. The Transformers timeline takes us back to before the creation of all life itself, as Optimus Prime helpfully explains.
Before time began, there was the cube.
It gave rise to a race of mechanical beings and their homeworld, Cybertron. This is where things immediately start to get confusing. At the dawn of time. Wow, off to an early start, Mr. Bay. You see, Age of Extinction says that many worlds were seeded with transformia. Yes, that is what they call it. Yes, it is extremely dumb. Well, this transformium actually created inorganic life. I suppose the Allspark could be a creation of consolidated transformium, or maybe even the origin of it. Hallelujah! Though the Allspark was created
before time began.
And yet transformium eradicated the dinosaurs. I guess like most creation myths, this one leaves a lot of unanswered questions. Either way, the end result is the same. A race of confusingly constructed and overly violent giant robots with questionably low intelligence. Yeah, the galaxy never stood a chance, did it? Lockdown in the fourth film is a direct servant of the aliens who seeded the transformium, and who possibly created the Allspark as well. Who knows? Not the screenwriters, that's for sure. These creators used Transformers as a labor force, which does explain why so many of them turn into construction equipment.
I am directly below the enemy scrotum.
So let's talk about the formation of this little blue marble we call home. Did you know that this fragile jewel floating in the vast expanse of space is actually a giant world-ending robot formerly voiced by Orson Welles? Yes, at the dawn of our solar system, the world-ender Unicron decided to take a nap or something. The Earth then formed around the giant robot. Again, I'm not sure the reason or even what will come of this. I do suspect it is why the Fallen would eventually hate humanity, but more on that later. For now, it's important to keep in mind that the seat of all human life is actually a giant horned Citizen Kane voiced robot man. Yeah, Earth Day is gonna be weird this year. So as I mentioned earlier, Transformium eradicated the dinosaurs and converted them to the rad-as-hell Dinobots. From an 8-year-old Grimlock superfan, thank you so much, you stupidly named Space MacGuffin.
Transformium.
During this time on the Transformer homeworld, the mechanical race was united under the rule of the 7 Primes. These spindly leaders decided to harvest various stars for the Energon to expand their empire. However, internal divisions quickly arose over destroying sentient life. One member, later named the Fallen, really hated humans and wanted nothing more than to stamp us out. Sometimes quite literally. It's not really explained why he hates humans so much. As I said, it could have something to do with Unicron, though I suspect it's because he hates how we get caught in his gears. The remaining Primes tried to stop the Fallen from destroying Earth and harvesting our sun. Even though it really looks like they're kicking his butt, they knew they would lose. So they stole the Matrix of Leadership and hid it in a tomb made of their own football huddle, destined to cuddle for all eternity. Defeated and unable to use his alien sun exploder, the Fallen returned to Cybertron. It wouldn't be long before that world was engulfed in war as well. And I thought the Transformers were such a peaceful race. Things on Cybertron aren't all that great. The planet looks like an absolute nightmare at the best of times. But now, there's an insurrection brewing. It's hard to say exactly how the war started, given that every piece of information we get about it comes out of the heavily biased mouth of Optimus Prime. However, we do know that before Autobot and Decepticon waged war, the Transformers were slaves to some gross alien dudes. Optimus and 6 others became knights, who managed to overthrow their oppressors and freed the Transformer race. These knights traveled the stars in the ship that would eventually become Lockdown's prison. I'm not sure what end this quest held, but when it was over, Optimus was the sole survivor, a theme common for him throughout the series. The transport truck Transformer wasn't yet leader of the Autobots. That honor would fall to Spock playing a red fire truck. Sentinel Prime was the leader of the Autobots during most of the war with the Decepticons. Both pieces of industrial machinery are somehow descended from the first 7 Primes. Okay, just because I can already hear you in the comments, no, Prime is not a title like King. That may be the case in any of the hundreds of cartoon or comic book adaptations, but Revenge of the Fallen clearly states that Prime is a lineage. Don't blame me, blame Alex Kurtzman. Well, actually, blame Alex Kurtzman for a lot more than that. I still have words about Picard Season 2, Alex.
The Queen of Filth, the Queen of Putrescence.
Sentinel and a group of Autobots boarded the Ark. The Ark was destroyed and possibly left adrift for thousands of years. So a few caveats to me placing this event here. I'm not sure exactly when Sentinel Prime and the Ark are set adrift, and how long it takes them to reach Earth. The ship is only traveling with the momentum it had when the engines were destroyed. So I assume it would take 1,000 years or so for it to drift to our solar system. To paraphrase a great hockey player, space is so humongous big, more than meets the eye. Planetside, the Dark Ages are in full swing. Humanity had other encounters with the Transformers before this, but it's only very vaguely mentioned in the series. Like how at some point Jetfire's father was the first wheel. Also, the Great Pyramids were actually built to encase the fallen Sun Exploder. The biggest on-screen encounter we have, though, comes from a side bonus of Arthurian legend. Because when you're in the 5th movie, why not? So Merlin and Arthur are at war with the Saxon forces. Things are not looking great until the iconic wizard, not named Gandalf, finds a group of Transformers living on the Earth. They give the wizard a staff, and with their help, he and Arthur use it to win the war. They tell him to hide it, and he does. I wonder if that'll come up later. It does. Megatron got himself all mixed up in our atmosphere and ended up frozen in ice for thousands of years, along with his precious cube. Eventually, he's discovered at the turn of the century, first by Archibald Witwiki and his Arctic exploration. He ended up luckier than the cast of AMC's The Terror in that he only saw a giant evil robot and went insane. Megatron also etched a secret code into his glasses that would show people where the cube was in 50 years when it's moved to a completely different continent. Impressive. The cube and the automaton were then discovered by the original 7, who then formed the secret Sector 7. Sector 7, under Herbert Hoover, then moved the cube and Tron to the site that would eventually become the Hoover Dam. In fact, the iconic landmark was constructed to hide the cube's power, not to, provide electricity to millions of Americans. Sector 7 then used Megatron to secretly advance technology through the 20th century. This is why the cube turns Xboxes and Nokias into ravenous little a-holes. By the way, this isn't the last time someone decides to make a new technology from this clearly evil robot. Come on, he has fangs, people! So everyone's favorite yellow soundboard has a confusing history. During Marky Mark's visit to the home of Westworld founder Anthony Hopkins, he is shown a World War II poster of Bumblebee. We then see that the Transformers actively engaged in World War II on the Allies' side. They attacked a Nazi base and destroyed every German in sight. The space race started with the launch of Sputnik in 1957. However, things really began to heat up in 1961, when a radar station detected a giant object crashing on the moon. And here I thought it was for a series of complex geopolitical reasons. Nope. Just spaceship. Then President Creepy-Faced JFK is informed of the downed Ark and escalates the space program. Over the next 8 years, the Apollo program escalates until Apollo 11 heads out for the moon. But there's still a lot to talk about before that even happens. On the other side of the world, the Soviet Union has their own space program. In 1959, the Soviets launched their Luna 3 moon probe. It saw an empty moon. However, in 1963, their Luna 4 probe showed that the Decepticons had already begun raiding the crashed ship, pulling the pillars needed to create the space bridge. However, since Sentinel Prime was needed and he was in Slumberland, they were stuck waiting for someone to wake the former Autobots leader with the Matrix of Leadership, which is this Krull-looking thing. So eventually Neil Armstrong and Buzz Aldrin land on the moon and undertake a secret mission to recon the crash site. So I'm going to speed up a little bit here because we haven't even got to the first damn movie yet. I told you all this was complex. In 1972, a group of Decepticons began a secret society with some rich and influential people. They operate in secret for decades, infiltrating both the US and Soviet Union. They make it so that both space programs are reduced and the moon is left unexplored. They also somehow caused the 1986 Chernobyl meltdown.
It's coming fast.
That is how an RBMK reactor core explodes.
Bumblebee is also sent to Earth once again by Optimus Prime, who is leading the fight back on Cybertron. The war is almost lost, so Bumblebee is being sent to Earth to protect it before the rest of the Autobots arrive. He encounters some trouble and ends up losing his voice box. After some scuffles with both Sector 7 and a couple of Decepticons, he parts ways with Kate Bishop and transforms into a 77 Camaro to await the coming of the one true Shia. So here we are, after all this time, at the first movie. Like I said earlier, this is an elaborate and rich universe. It's like if Star Wars was louder. Well, it's the early summer of 2007, and young Sam Witwiki is in need of a cool new ride. Unfortunately, failing to hawk his great-grandfather's junk means all he can afford is some clunker from the late great Bernie Mac.
Yeah, but the paint's faded.
Yeah, but it's custom.
It's custom faded?
What is your first car? I wouldn't expect you to understand.
It turns out to be our old pal Bumblebee. Archibald Witwiki's old glasses have hit the very relevant to 2007 main page of eBay, and both Autobots and Decepticons want to use it to find the Allspark. After some lawn-based shenanigans, all our players, plus some army dudes, end up in a massive fight in the totally real Mission City. An awakened Megatron tries and fails several times to kill the mid-2000s Shia LaBeouf. Man, am I on Megatron's side? Shia shoves his power cube into Megatron, which deactivates him somehow. We now have our first Megatron death of the series. Megatron's like the Kenny of this series.
My God, she killed
Megatron.
A few years after the events of the first film, the Autobots are growing in number. The second wave arrive on their ship, the Xanthium. They then team up with a new military unit named Nest. Together they invade sovereign nations and cause massive destruction. Okay, there is some lines about how they're working with the Chinese government to hunt Decepticons only. At least there are boundaries, and the Autobots aren't just attacking humans on behalf of the US government's personal interests. Sorry, they actually do that in the next movie. In the meantime, Sam Witwiki finds a shard of the Allspark in his jacket. It beams the location of a new source of energon into his brain. It leads to the Fallen's now pyramid-covered Sun Destroyer. While attempting to save Sam from the Decepticons, his boyfriend Optimus is slain by a real-lived Megatron. Don't worry, kids, he'll get better. There's no Rodimus Prime in this movie. Thankfully, after some screaming and globetrotting, they all end up in Egypt, where Sam recovers the Matrix of Leadership from Robot Heaven and uses it to reactivate Optimus. Optimus dispatches the Fallen, because only a Prime could, for some wholly unexplained reason. Seriously, it's like these Transformers are also magic. Everyone fights, it's very loud, and the movie ends with the Fallen defeated, Megatron injured, and the Decepticons almost wiped out. Yay, the franchise is almost over! Wait, there's how many movies left? It's time for the third and final Shia starring Transformers movie. The poor guy is having trouble finding a job in a plot that takes up way too much of this film and ultimately has no consequence. Meanwhile, the Transformers are now actively attacking nations like Iran. So much for protecting all mankind, the Decepticons have hatched an evil plot to bring Cybertron to Earth using those old dimensional bridges on the moon. They use their secret society and human assets to trick the Autobots into reactivating Sentinel Prime. He betrays the Autobots, and the Decepticons lay waste to Chicago. I thought they were robots, not Rahm Emanuel. The Autobots still win, however. They fake their own deaths to get around a recent piece of US legislation. Who hasn't been there, right? They then manage to defeat Sentinel, who Optimus executes in cold blood. Our hero. So comes to an end the era of Shia. There is no direct mention in the next film of where he is. However, given how many times in the series Transformers are shown to be radioactive, I can take a guess. It's cancer. Since Chicago, the government has turned on the Autobots and is hunting them with a new task force named Cemetery Wind, which sounds like a metaphor for a really quiet fart. Optimus was severely damaged and is hiding as a more cartoon-appropriate model of semi-truck. It doesn't last because with the help of failed inventor K.D. Yeager, yes, his character's real name, Optimus is back to looking like a Guy Fieri shirt. In the intervening years, Cemetery Wind has been working with the evil robot Lockdown. He wants Optimus and is using the humans to get him. Also, a tech company run by the Tooch himself have refined Transformium and used it to build a new, better Megatron named Galvatron. Stop bringing this evil robot back to life! They all end up in China because of international film releasing profitability, and Optimus defeats Lockdown with the help of my boy Grimlock. After a well-earned victory, Optimus reveals an ability to fly that would have been helpful 3 movies ago, and leaves Earth to search for his creators, and then punch him in the face. And here we are at the end. Continuity-wise, America has become some kind of lawless wasteland because of constant Transformer attacks. Cade is living in a literal junkyard, and Optimus has made a heel turn. Thanks to another newly introduced robot named the Contessa, our brainwashed Blue Boy heads back to Earth to recreate the plot of Fast 7. Or was that Fast 8? ScreenRant, do not make me do a Fast and Furious timeline. That might break me. Anyway, Contessa wants Optimus to find Merlin's staff and use it to drain the energy from the Earth. Also, there is another secret military task force formed to hunt the Transformers. 4th time's a charm, I guess. With the help of a legendary actor who is clearly just collecting a paycheck, the good guys manage to stop Contessa and free Optimus's mind. They also have a big fight at Stonehenge, which is a secret Transformer device. At this point, is there any historical landmark that isn't? With Contessa defeated, the Autobots decide to return to the ravaged Cybertron and rebuild. Contessa is still around, however, and has more plans to destroy Unicron and the Earth. But we will never see that happen because the next film is a soft reboot. So that's our Transformers timeline as it is. It's a mess that only raises more questions as you think about it. At this point, I think the Michael Bay version of this world is wholly over. Watching every film in one day left me tired and sad. So, I guess what I'm saying is that the Transformers series is the highest form of art. I salute you in your genius, Michael Bay. You broke me. Good job.